let's talk about what I'm going to read in July. So I've been revamping my Plinko board and I wanted to have it ready for this month, but I actually have a ton of reading plans already for July, so instead I think I'm going to save it for August. That kind of lines up with my birthday anyways, so I feel like that's a good plan. So I kind of have the next month and a half reading planned out, so I'm just going to fill you in right now. So I was going to do some reading based around Canada Day, but honestly I'm not feeling that patriotic right now. With the amount of murdered Indigenous children that have been found on residential school property in Canada lately, I'm not feeling like celebrating this country right now. So instead, I've decided that for the first 2 weeks of July, I'm going to be reading Indigenous works. The first book I'm going to be reading is Moon of the Crested Snow by Wabgishuk Rice. I believe that this is about a small northern Anishinaabe community that gets cut off from their power source, I believe. So they start running out of food and other resources and just trying to survive as winter comes. Then visitors show up and I believe there is some tension and some sort of power struggle. I've heard nothing but amazing things about this book and I'm so excited to read it. And I know that the story itself isn't exactly like word for word based on true story or anything, but I know that many Indigenous communities struggle to get the resources they need from the government, so I feel like this is going to be a really important one. The next thing on my list is The Marrow Thieves by Cherie Demeline. I'm honestly surprised I never had to read this in school, and I am very excited to make up for that. This is about a world that has been ravaged by global warming, and somehow in that people have lost their ability to dream, and it has led many people to madness. The only people who are able to still dream are North America's Indigenous people, and the rest of the world has decided to steal the marrow from Indigenous people in order to cure the rest of the world's inability to dream. I feel like this was a really celebrated book here in Canada, so once again, I just don't know how I never ended up reading this, and I'm very excited to rectify that. I will say I am a little worried about this one because I hate hearing about dreams in books, but I do love the theme it's exploring about stealing things from other people's cultures. I feel like colonialism is something like I've only recently been introduced to, which is ridiculous, but it's something that I'm still trying to learn more about. The next book on this list that I want to read is Split Tooth by Tanya Tagaq. So I don't totally 100% know what this one is about, but I've heard it is very different and unique, and that it explores some sort of like horror and dark elements while also dealing with real world issues, and I'm just very excited about that idea. I love anything that's a little dark. I've heard that the audiobook is really good, so maybe I'll try this one on audio. I know that she is an Inuit throat singer and that is included as an element in the audiobook, which is really cool and definitely not something I've ever experienced before. So I'm excited to check this one out. The next book on my list is Seven Fallen Feathers by Tanya Talaga. So this is a nonfiction book about 7 different Indigenous high school students who died in Thunder Bay, Ontario between 2000 and 2011. I believe that this book takes on kind of the long-standing ramifications of these residential schools. I listened to a podcast called Missing and Murdered that also looked at this, and it looked at one specific case, and just hearing that one story was so affecting and upsetting, and I think that like looking at specific cases makes it so personal. So I'm really looking forward to listening to this audiobook and listening to these kids' stories. The next book on my list is Bone Black by Carol Rose Golden-Eagle. This is a crime story about murdered and missing Indigenous women. It revolves around a main character whose twin sister goes missing, and she is not happy with the investigation, so she decides to take it on herself. This obviously is an issue that is still all too prevalent in Canada today, so I think anything that calls attention to that is really important and vital, and I love a good crime book, so I'm very excited about this one. And the last 2 things on my list for the first 2 weeks of July are 2 different graphic novels. The first one is called This Place 150 Years Retold, which I believe this is a look at Canada and how it came to be, but through an indigenous lens. I believe that a ton of different creators have come together and have told different parts of the story. So I think that's really, really interesting and really cool. This is something I actually meant to read a long time ago and forgot about, so I'm really glad to kind of push myself to read it now. And then the second graphic novel that I plan on reading is If I Go Missing by Brianna Johnny. I'm going to read the synopsis from Goodreads for this one. It says, If I Go Missing is derived from excerpts of a letter that went viral and was also the basis of a documentary film. In her letter, Johnny calls out the authorities for neglecting to immediately investigate missing Indigenous people and urges them to not treat me as the Indigenous person I am proud to be if she were to be reported missing. Indigenous artist Neil Shanakapo provides the artwork. Through his illustrations, he imagines a situation in which a young Indigenous woman does disappear, portraying the reaction of her community, her friends, the police, and media. I love graphic novels, and that sounds really good. So that is my TBR for the first 2 weeks of July. Now, the rest of this video is going to be talking about the month after that. So the last 2 weeks of July and the first 2 weeks of August. So a while back, like several years ago, I made a video called 30 Before 30, which was the 30 books I wanted to read before I turned 30. I thought, oh, this will be no problem. I have several years, so how could I possibly fail? Well, I turned 30 at the end of August, and I've read 4 books on that entire list. 4 out of 30. So, not great. Like I said, my birthday is at the end of August, and I don't want to be reading a ton of classics that are going to bore the crap out of me near my birthday. So I'm just going to do it at the beginning of August and the end of July. I picked out 10, and like clearly I'm not getting to 30. I have accepted that. It's fine. It's fine. But I want to at least attempt to get some off this list. A passing grade would be nice. So I picked out 10. I'm not going to read the synopsises because I'm lazy and these are classics, so you probably already know what they're about. I'm also not going to read the authors' names because I didn't write them down. So the first one on this list is Catch-22. I believe this has something to do with war. I think this is a satire. I believe this is a satire about war. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the entire idea about Catch-22 is that the only way to get out of the war is to be certified crazy, but the only way to get yourself certified crazy would mean you're not crazy or something. I did not explain that properly, but hopefully I'll know after I read the book. The next book on this list is Never Let Me Go. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure I already know the ending to that one, so that's unfortunate. But I've never read anything by this author, and I've heard so many people say amazing things about his work. So I'm very much looking forward to that one. The next one is The Bell Jar. That one I know is by Sylvia Plath. I've been convinced by Connor that I will enjoy this. I watched him rave about this book, and so I'm thinking that it must be amazing. He has much more cultured taste than I do, but I'm still hoping for the best here. The next one is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This seems more like a psychological thriller, which I'm definitely into, so I think that's another one that I could actually like. The next one is A Count of Monte Cristo. Nope. The Count of Monte Cristo. Like he's the Count of Butter. Okay. The Count of Monte Cristo. I used to love this movie when I was a kid. I'm sure that they are not quite the same thing. I also know that this is a chunker of a book, so I'm probably screwing myself here, but I'm going to read it anyways. The next is Lolita, which, you know, could be fun. Gotta add something fucked up on here. Then This Side of Paradise, which I tried reading. I started it and I actually really enjoyed it, but I only got 4% in, so I mean, that's not saying much. After that is American Pastoral. I recently read the blurb to this and I was like, excuse me, this sounds amazing. How have I not read this yet? After that is The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler. I think this is a heist novel, correct me if I'm wrong, or at least some sort of con man situation, which seems up my alley. And the last one on this list is Child of God by Cormac McCarthy. I've just always wanted to read something by this author, and this was the only one that sounded interesting to me, so those are my reading plans for the next month and a half. I'm sure I'm going to still be reading like some other things here or there. I mean, there is no erotica on this list, so clearly I'm going to be reading something else during this time. But overall, those are my plans for the next little bit. I hope you liked this video, and I hope you come back again soon. Bye.